episode 5. As you know, we're on the RAGS, and we are
Risa,
Amy,
Gloria,
Sloan.
and Sloan. Which is RAGS. It's an acronym for RAGS. Which is
Yeah,
also
duh.
from the news.
Yeah,
We're not.
duh.
We're not juvenile.
At all. We're not
Okay.
trying to be rude.
We
We
are
just
not.
are.
Yes.
Anybody have any good headlines this week?
well, we should probably start with one headline and
Yeah.
move on to which the headline that we have for this week is New Ways to Make a Living. With COVID-19, sometimes people found that they were no longer employed, that their own businesses ended, so they had to find new and different ways to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's many things in here, but one of them were these 2 high school theater teachers who are sisters, and they found that to teach theater virtually was strange and they really couldn't do it. So they knew that they were good seamstresses and they decided to make masks. And they made about 2,000 masks and donated them. And then they decided that they should go into business and make masks. So they started an Etsy account and they made masks. Now they're branching out because we may not be wearing masks forever. So they're branching out.
Feels like
I
it.
am. I'm wearing one forever.
It feels like
I
it.
might too.
Yeah.
Well, now they're talking about making anxiety vests for dogs.
Oh, I know those. They're like really tight and they hold the dog
When
all
there's-
tight.
when there's
so they're
thunder,
thunder.
Thunder.
Thunder jackets.
And
Yeah.
and 4th of July, right? 4th
Yep.
of July.
4th of
Right.
July.
They're
Work.
important.
So
Mine doesn't work.
so they're branching out, but we actually know somebody that during COVID
Yeah.
made masks.
Yeah.
I have one that I
Yeah.
got from her.
Yeah.
was reversible.
She wasn't doing it to earn a living. She was doing it because she was used to being on the road. It's Steve Stevens' wife, Josie, who's amazing. And she was just bored being in the house all the time.
Yeah.
So she started making masks, and they were real. Did you bring one? Did I?
Forgot.
Oh, they were so cool.
Well,
Yeah.
mine
She
was
made one
reversible.
for all of us.
Mine
Yeah.
was mine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
we
love
all
that
had them.
mask. Yep.
Mine was reversible. I had heels on one side, and on the other side it said,
Yeah.
"Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you."
How many times did it say it?
About 12, maybe 14.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, that was adorable. I think the pandemic forced people to try things or do things that they would never normally have had time to do.
well, you did. What did you do?
Well, I didn't start a business, but I
You
could
should've.
have.
I
I mean,
should have.
So I learned the art of sourdough bread making and challah, and I did baguettes, but the sourdough I really loved because
So did everybody.
yeah. And that was kind of forced because you couldn't find freaking
And that was part of the 15
Yeast.
pounds added during COVID,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To everybody she dropped it off to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you.
Amy.
Thank you for taking it so I didn't have to. But I went to a friend's birthday gathering the other day, a few nights ago, and there was this gorgeous bread on the table, like beautiful Bon Appetit magazine spread sitting there. And this woman, Jackie, made it. She went into business. She started making sourdough and making bread. This was like a yeast baguette, but she started doing it because of the pandemic and has a full thriving business and is now supplying cafes and restaurants with her
Are
bread
you kidding?
Wow.
and loves it.
But you could have done that. You didn't have time.
I mean,
You created a television series or
Yeah.
a series. You had
yeah, there's
Yeah.
a lot.
So
There's so much to do. in a
But see, she
pandemic.
definitely found a silver lining to the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because that never would have happened.
That's
for her.
right. That's
So-
right.
But it's true. A lot of people had to change
you-
jobs or
But you know what though? How all of us have had a lot and really interesting and unique jobs in our lifetime, haven't we?
Yes,
I'm
we
not,
have.
I'm not saying that I want to fall back on any of them.
haven't.
You haven't.
no, mine
You
aren't
have.
interesting. They're not
they're,
interesting.
They're a little bit interesting. Your job now is interesting.
Mm.
But we should talk about what we had and how we got to where we are.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah, sure.
some of them.
Well, certainly we can all mention a job or two that we had that got us to where we are today.
Yeah.
Good, bad, or indifferent.
Do you want to
Yeah.
go out of
Yeah.
order? Do you want to do yours because you didn't have very
We
many?
can go out of order. I think we need to
No.
do
I
some
don't want to go
deprogramming.
first. All right.
Okay.
When I was 18, well, everybody else had jobs much younger than me. But
Yeah.
I guess in St. Louis they had child labor laws, and you couldn't start working at 14 the way some of you maybe did.
Yeah, we did not have child labor laws. If we did, my mother imposed them. And
Anyway,
that was, you are a child and you will labor at a very young age. Anyway, fun.
well, my brother's wife worked for the government. She worked for a place called the Record Center in St. Louis. And it was a place where they had everybody's records, like government records. It was a government job. And I went there, and I think the starting grade was GS3, if I recall correctly. I think that's really where you start. And it means there's nobody lower than you. It's usually for interns, I think.
Okay.
And I actually got paid.
So were you a GS3 or 2?
No, I was a 3. I did start at a 3. But I think that's normal.
What does GS stand for?
Government something.
Government.
I
Yeah,
had
that's
one.
what the S stands
GS.
for. Something. Government something.
I had a government job. Go ahead.
Anyway, it was a filing job. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
8 hours a day. And it was really hard work for me. No, it was different.
Yeah.
I mean,
You learn
that
something
point
new
in
when
my
you're
life,
18 years old
yes,
and you've not filed for
No.
the government before. I would imagine you've
Yeah.
learned a lot of things.
and I had already been in college for 2 years.
Yeah.
So it was a whole new experience for me. It was a summer job, and I survived it.
What was your major in college?
Well, 2 different times.
You were getting your master's in filing?
Yes, I was. English and fashion design.
What?
Yeah.
I
Wow.
didn't know that.
Ooh,
No wonder you
so
have so much
great.
clothes
I
in your
know.
closet.
I know.
I know. That's what I tell my husband that I have to do. Are you making a face at me?
No, I'm like, that's why you have so many clothes. I make inappropriate facial expressions by accident.
So anyway, that was my first job.
Okay.
And my second
By
job.
the way, GS stands for General Schedule.
Oh.
Oh.
Did you just look that up, or did you know it?
I looked it up.
And is there anything below a GS3?
Well, I haven't gotten there
But
yet.
I did tell you this earlier because I had a government, that one of my 800 jobs that I had in the summer as a young person. But I worked for the government, and we still have, for every pay period, every 2-week period, you got 4 hours of sick leave and 4 hours of vacation time.
But how do you know you didn't take yours back then?
I know I didn't.
I
Because
didn't
I know I didn't.
either.
How could
Okay,
I worked in the summer.
girls,
Yeah.
the grades run from 1 through 15.
And
Oh.
Michael's a 15.
Okay.
And
is the top.
15 receives the highest
Right.
pay.
I don't
Yeah.
want to tell you what that is. I know what that is too.
Okay, so my second job, I guess I would have been maybe 19. And I worked for a friend of mine's dad was looking for somebody to do reception work and greet reception work anyway. And he had a business called Charles Schmidt Rolls Royce. And they sold exotic, in quotes, cars. That was
He
their-
sounds handsome.
Yeah, he was. He was. And anyway, I was hired and worked there minutes. I think 2 weeks, and I was being praised how well I did. And I was really inexperienced. I lied. I said that I had done telephone work before. I had done, kind of.
I've
Like
had a few
hospitality.
employees like that, Glo.
You've got what?
I've had a few employees like you before.
I think I have too.
The worst. Absolutely the worst. Anyway, one day I answered the phone and the phones were going crazy. And I think today is that called rolling phones?
Yeah, rolling calls.
Yeah, I don't even know what that means, but I didn't know what it meant then. And I could really only deal with one call at a time then
What
and
is
now.
rolling calls
Yeah,
when
I
you
don't know what
answer
it
the
means.
phone?
You just keep rolling it for your boss. They
Oh,
say,
okay.
get me so and so, and you get that, and then they'll say,
I don't even know
after
what
that,
that
get me
means.
so and so, and so
Okay.
you just keep doing it.
Anyway, there were so many calls coming in, and he was out showing a customer a car. And I paged him, and he didn't answer. And I paged him again, and everybody around me is cracking up and going, "Oh my God, what are you doing? What are you doing?" I didn't realize that in my nervous behavior, I said, "Charles Shit, line 1, Charles Shit, line 1." And I lost my job.
Oh, they're so
And-
mean.
I hope he
And-
listens
but
to
today
this.
that wouldn't happen. You could never get fired today for something so so
Yes, you
innocent.
could.
Yeah.
You could.
Innocent.
I mean,
Oh, well, they would, if
If
you
you
have
call
to
people
was
names,
it really like
prove it was innocent,
if you were
yeah.
to meditate on that for 30 minutes, was it innocent?
No, it was
Oh, okay.
innocent.
I'm just
Okay, so
making
that
sure.
then I went to my hardest job I ever had in my whole life.
Which was?
Not my present job, being a mother.
Oh,
let's not talk about
Wow.
that.
that's a
right now.
job.
No, I'm just saying that's a really hard job.
Yeah.
Hard job.
It is. And
Yeah.
people don't really
Harder
know.
than being married to Terry Butler.
No, it's not at all. But it is a hard job. And sometimes people will say, "What do you do? What do you do for a living?"
Oh,
Just some mom.
I marvel
Yeah.
at those people
Me
that have
too.
multiple children.
Yeah,
I do.
I do. And
Yeah.
I
it's
think
just,
it's a really
do
hard
too.
job, and to be a good mother is
Yeah.
a really hard job.
yeah.
Oh, it takes everything, right? I
Right.
mean, I don't know. I've kind of skirted that job, but it
Well,
just
you're married to Fred, so
I
that's
know.
kind of like a
I know.
child.
I mean, it's
Well,
too
it's a
much.
lot
It's
like
just
a
But there's a
child.
big difference between being a mother and being a good mother.
Yeah. Oh,
That's true.
huge difference.
Huge difference.
True.
So
But
that was my
Lots of
hardest
people
job.
can give birth. It's,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it takes a lot to be a great mom.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
friends who are great moms, and they take care of themselves too. I mean, I think that's why they're a great mom. But
Mm.
woo, it's a lot of work. Like
right.
focus all the time.
Yeah. Hard.
And focused playtime, focused,
Hmm.
unfocused for themselves, and then right back to focus. It's
That's what I was
very
going to say.
clear.
Okay. Who wants to go next?
Well, you just reminded me of Fred's one and only job ever. So he gets a job at
I heard
the record store or whatever.
Or the
in his
record center
town.
in St. Louis, which was where you did all the government
Yeah,
filing.
yeah, the record store where you
it.
buy records and music. And
if
he was
anybody's
there,
Do we don't even have those anymore,
No, we
do
don't.
we?
I'm
No,
just
we
going to say it. If
don't.
any kid is listening to this, they're going to go, "A what?"
yeah, like a
Yeah.
store where you actually go in and they're all
They do.
alphabetized.
Amoeba Records is
Amoeba.
reopening
I
again.
know,
Did-
that's
yeah, it
so
did.
good.
Oh,
so
That's
awesome.
great. So he was on like day 2 or something, and he said to his boss, "Hey, I gotta go to the Black Sabbath show, so I can't be here tomorrow." And the
said,
boss was like, "I'm sorry, what?" And he goes, "Yeah, well, Black Sabbath's playing, so I can't be here tomorrow." And she was like, "Well, you won't be here tomorrow, and you won't be here the next day, and you may as well take next week off, and
Good
the week
for her.
following." I know. And he's like, "Yeah, whatever, all right."
Well, he should
Go see Black Sabbath.
He should have been commended for being honest. He could have called in sick and he didn't.
Yeah.
He could have. That's true.
So
That's
No
true.
commendation for that.
I mean, I'm with you. I mean, it's better that he
Sorry.
didn't lie, but
No.
he's also
If he
like,
didn't sleep all night, fine, but he should have been at work.
yeah, I agree.
well,
Well, he had to drive far, so he couldn't be at work.
I
'cause he
admire
needed
the
to drive.
honesty.
Well, then skip this concert.
I agree. That's the thing.
I'm not sure if some of my jobs led to where I am, but they might have. They might have.
I bet they
Okay,
did.
so-
I bet they did.
Oh, absolutely.
We can't go all the way back to the Stone Age from when I started working.
When they didn't have electricity.
when they didn't, right. But
when
when I
you were
was
scrubbing the walls of caves, the caves that we all lived in.
my first year in college, because I always had a job because I always wanted to have my own money. I didn't
Yeah.
want to be dependent on my parents completely and totally. I just wanted to have my own money. So when I was in my first year of college, I worked in a movie theater in what they called the combat zone. And they called it the combat zone because during the Navy time, the sailors at the Boston Harbor would get off their boats and they would walk up the street and they would go to the bars and they would fight. So it was called the combat zone. It still wasn't a great part of town. So sometimes I sold candy, sometimes I sold tickets. And in the ticket booth, it was like in you had to walk into the building. So it was in there. And it was probably a bulletproof ticket booth. And
Yeah.
a little child, I was wearing a T-shirt and it had a man on it who was a singer. His name was Leo Sayer. But before he was a singer, he was a mime.
Which I never knew that.
No, me neither.
But my T-shirt had Leo Sayer on it as a mime. Now you know what mime makeup looks like. So this little child walked up.
I love that.
The little child walked up to the booth and he looked at my T-shirt and he looked at me and he looked at my T-shirt and he looked at me and he said, "Is that you on your T-shirt?" That'll tell you what my face looked like. And then sometimes I sold candy, and whatever movie was playing, sometimes I'd be selling candy to people, and the tears would come down my face because I knew it was a sad part of the movie because I had already seen it and I've heard it like 30 times. I know.
Oh.
So maybe I started loving movies then.
Yeah.
And then when I was in graduate school, I modeled. And I worked in New York and Chicago and Washington, D.C. And I sometimes did extra parts. I mean, sometimes I did commercials and those had lines, but
Extra part?
I know.
Yeah,
When you say that, it makes me think that
I
you
would
like
love it.
modeled parts.
No.
Like,
No, it makes me
No.
think she did.
No, she did some
Me too.
after hours work.
Yeah,
No,
that's
no,
what
no,
it sounds
no.
like. Me
No,
too.
no. In fact,
look at those legs. I know it's a podcast, but if you could only all
Yeah,
see these
between
legs,
us.
you'd be
It's
like,
Her and
right.
Stacy.
Roger
so
Yeah.
Ailes here.
Yeah.
So anyway, so there were movies. So I worked in movies sometimes, and I thought this is interesting. And I had a girlfriend that was an attorney in New York. I hope she's listening. And she was dating a William Morris agent. So I knew there was an agency called William Morris. I didn't know there were other agencies. I just knew there was that one.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this sounds interesting because I got a master's degree in psychology. So I thought I can go.
Perfect.
I'm going to go apply for a job. So I knew two people that lived in New York, and I went to New York and I applied for a job, and I badgered them until they gave me an interview. And I interviewed with a man who had gone through some assistance because he got sued for sexual harassment 39 years ago.
Wow.
And I
One time?
I think one time. And I went to his office and I interviewed with him, and it was a Friday. And I said to him, he said, we interviewed, and he said, I'll let you know in 2 weeks if you have the job. But that Monday I was going back to Washington. I was going back home. And I said to him, I need to know today. Like, who says that? And he said, okay, call me at the end of the workday. And I called him at the end of the workday, and I got the job. And then I had to find a place to live and move to New York over 2 weeks. But in those days, in those early days, and I think this is going to lead to you,
Yeah.
Sloan, in a minute, but I did have bosses that maybe left a lot to be desired in that department. My second boss, who I loved dearly, and to this day, he passed away not too long ago. And he was older, and he was Italian, and he was funny. And he'd sit in his office, and I would sit at my desk in the hallway like assistants do. And he'd yell out to me, "Get in here, you long-legged cocksucker." And I'd say to him, you know what? I'm busy. I'll be there in a minute.
Oh,
But it didn't bother me. I mean, I knew he wasn't
yeah.
being...
There's no way.
Nobody could do that today.
No
I mean,
way.
not even.
But I do have long legs. Don't
And-
say it.
and-
Don't say it. Anyway, so I think that was those jobs, the movie
Yeah.
theater, and maybe that led to...
Yeah.
Funny how
me
well
today.
he knew her.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, so we've had we young when we were young, not
Yeah.
when some others were young, but when we were young, those were our bosses, right? Sloan, you had them.
Well, I definitely
I
did, and I think
Somehow.
going to work in Washington in 1980, and I would think New York was, I think it was probably that way everywhere, but it was certainly a man's world.
Not in the Midwest. I don't think they did things like that.
No,
I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
you don't think
Oh,
so?
okay.
Oh, yeah.
I
do.
I think definitely in DC, Hollywood, and New York.
Maybe all the Midwestern guys moved
it wouldn't
to
have
DC
mattered.
So
and
they could do
Hollywood
that.
so they could.
If a man came out of college with the same degree I had, they were paid double.
Yeah.
It just
course,
was that
of course.
way.
May I say one thing about my
Yes.
job, though? Now that you say that, when I started my career at William Morris in New York, because there was still a William Morris, it's now merged, and it's WME, William Morris Endeavor. But when I started, they started young men in the mailroom. They started women as secretaries because they thought they should start as secretaries and stay as secretaries.
Right.
I'm
So
like, "What?"
did you start as a secretary?
I did, and I had a
For how
master's.
long?
I had a master's degree.
That's crazy. How long?
That-
How long were
it's
you
true.
a secretary?
I was with him for 8 months, and then I moved to the man that called me the long-legged,
Mhm.
whatever, I won't say. And then, so I just moved, and then after that, I was actually promoted after that desk because I worked really hard and I did a great job, and I was good at my job, and I just kept getting promoted, even though I didn't start in the mailroom.
Yeah.
Even
I
though
love
I wasn't
that.
I
I love
wasn't in the
that.
training
too.
program. But I'm like, whatever. I'm sorry, Sloan,
Yeah.
I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I don't mind. You're right. I mean, it's women. I mean, I still think we still have to fight for equal pay. I mean, this is 40 years later. It's
Crazy.
ridiculous,
Yeah.
but it was a casting couch in DC. I don't know if it was that way in New York. We know it was that way and still is that way in Hollywood.
I dared
Things
anybody
are
look at me
changing.
sideways. I did.
Yeah, but you were a trailblazer, I think, for women,
I just
Risa, because you didn't take the crap that a lot of women took. And
Correct.
I think that, when you started, weren't you the only female agent?
no. I was
Or in the
when I
office?
became an agent. No, there were female agents, but it's interesting. The generation before mine were women.
It may not have looked like Risa, though.
No, they did. They were either single, or they got married and did
Forever,
not have children.
right.
They did not have children.
Right.
My generation, we were able to get married and have children. But the
Wow.
generation right before me, they were either
I
single
thought
or
you were in an office and you were the only woman
No.
for a while, or like
No.
one of two. No?
no.
Oh, okay.
That was a
That must
huge
be-
agency.
We had
That must be another
like
friend.
Sue
Maybe.
Mengers
Yeah,
before Risa.
Sue
you know,
Mengers
right?
bought me to California.
Okay, so she was like one of the most famous agent managers
Very-
at the time. There was,
Very-
very famous, very overweight, never married, right?
No, she was
no
married.
kids.
She was married.
Oh, was
was
she?
married, yes.
But
She moved me
that
to
was
California.
her whole life.
She moved me to California.
Mhm.
Right. That was that generation.
Mhm.
Just like her. They did get married, but they did not have children. I don't think anybody did. Some had stepchildren,
Mhm.
but no.
Okay, Sloan, finish
Sorry.
what you were saying.
Okay, no, I mean, I'm just agreeing with Risa that our era, I think it was very hard to have it all. I mean, I think some people had, whether they think they had it all, whether they got married, had kids, had a career, I think something had to give because women had to work twice as hard
Mhm.
Right.
and still run the household and take care of the kids because the men were working. Men just didn't do those things. I think the generation today does.
Does, yes.
But in my era,
Not in my house.
I do have girlfriends that I went to college with that went on to law school or to med school or business school who kind of have it all. But
Mhm.
I don't know if you can have a great marriage, a great family, and a great career. There's just it just was too hard back then.
Yeah.
I mean,
You were in Washington
Yeah.
in 1980?
yeah. Well, I worked. I was started college then, but I worked the whole time I was in school. So I was in DC from 80 to 91, and in college in Baltimore at the same time. And I moved to Connecticut in 91 to start grad school, which ended up I got sucked back to Texas right when I was starting. But yeah, I was there during that whole era.
I put a concert
Of-
on Ethel Kennedy's lawn to raise money for Teddy Kennedy's presidential campaign, and it wound up paying off his campaign debts.
Oh, I
And
went to
you
dinner at Teddy Kennedy's house one night.
Were you?
I don't
'cause
know if I was.
You could have been at that concert. Did you?
Yeah.
I
go?
could have. I might have been. I had a boyfriend who was very close buddies with Teddy, and I went to his house for a couple of events, Democratic events. So I don't know if it was
Or were you a Democrat?
that. I worked for
Just
both. I worked in firms that were bi or we
By
did-
political?
Well, I kind of we had political campaigns that were for Democrats and political campaigns that were for Republicans. But don't forget, the Republican Party in 1980 is not the Republican Party
No.
of 2021.
That's true.
It was a real Republican Party. I mean,
Yeah, no.
it wasn't this Trump cult.
Yeah.
We got her started.
Oops. Oops.
Rewind.
So what was your first job there that stood out?
My first job was I worked for a senator from Nevada, actually, who I had an interview in the Reagan White House, and I didn't get the job because I had an intern for a Democratic congresswoman of Baltimore. Anyway, a very rabid Democrat. So back then, the Reagan White House was kind of like the Kremlin, extremely, extremely conservative. So I mean, not like today, but just it was very different, very ideological. So I went to a payphone. This is 1980.
Oh, yeah.
And
A what? Now the kids are like,
Right.
huh?
What's a payphone?
And I called the senator because his daughter was a good friend of mine from camp when we were kids. We were great friends. And I said, Senator Ed, I just had an interview at the White House. And he said, come on over to my office. So his executive assistant was from Houston and actually had come to Washington because her boss was Jim Baker.
Ooh.
And she, Treasury secretary under Reagan, James Baker. And so I went to see Margaret, sweetest person in the world. And they gave me a job as an intern working in. And so now I'm on the Republican side. And I was right across the hallway from Joe Biden's office. This is 1980. 81, I guess. And anyway, it was really interesting times back then. What?
Nothing. I just asked if you were his age, but I was just teasing.
Just about.
I'm very immature.
Anyway, he was a brand new newlywed back then. I mean, that's how long ago. I mean, Joe Biden was sweetest, nicest, most handsome guy, 1981 or 2. And so anyway, I started working there. And when I graduated from college, I needed a real job. And I went to work for a very well-known lobbyist. And the lobbyist was the Irvine. Irvine was the office in California of a guy named Stu Spencer, who had ran Reagan's gubernatorial campaign. And now this was a guy named Bill Hecht, who ran the Washington office. So one night we were out because his wife and girlfriend were both tied up since it was Halloween.
Oh.
And I had to be his date for a big Republican dinner. And that's when he told me how my new job position was going to go.
On your back?
I knew, yes.
Oh.
Well, I may have been on top. I don't know, Glow. I mean, however he wanted, but it was a new, this is the way things were going to work. So I knew I had to find what
do you do? What do you do in that moment? Are you like nodding and sort of smiling? Are you running out the door?
Exactly.
What are you doing?
I'm thinking, okay, what I am going to have to figure this out. But I played along. I played along for a month until
does that mean you gave
immediately.
In? What does that mean?
Oh, no. I mean, I just.
I need clarity.
Oh, Bill. Oh, you're so funny.
Yeah,
oh, that's great.
play
Of
it off,
course,
laugh it off.
Yes, yeah. I was never one of those girls like, oh, how dare you? I mean, no. I played it along, but immediately the first morning after this happened, I called a guy who was at the White House, and I knew he was leaving to start his own firm. And I called him that day, and I had lunch with him that week. And I was hired to go to work in his new office, which was political strategy and campaign, running campaigns. And it was a really hot new firm to be involved with. So I was really
excited. Let me ask you a
excited.
question. Then did you confront the person that told you how it was going to go and say something? 'Cause I
Oh,
hope you
only
did.
after I had my job and I
Yes,
went in
that's
and,
what I mean,
and
after
announced.
that.
Oh, yes. Oh my God, it was the best revenge ever.
One of my first jobs, it was a terrible job looking back now. I was so naive and I was 15. I had a boyfriend who lived in.
You worked and had a boyfriend at 15?
Yeah, well, sort of. He was in a band.
Of course.
And he lived in Texas at the time because I met him when he was on tour.
Oh.
And I needed money to pay the phone bills. Like that's really what I needed
remember
money
those
for.
days, yeah.
Yeah, remember there was no cell phone, and it
Oh,
was
yeah.
long distance calling was
very
very
expensive.
expensive.
Very big deal. Very
So
big deal.
way back then, my cell phone, my long distance bills were like $100 a month, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Especially when you're 15.
Yeah.
So I get this job, and my mom, I think for the first until I could drive, was driving me to this job. It was in this little like strip mall in Phoenix, Arizona. I guarantee she had no idea. She was busy. She was working. My brother had stuff. I had cheerleading, and like, we ran her ragged. And she dropped me off, and I just, go into the little place, and it was this tiny little room, barely bigger than this, lined with little cubicles, like a wall, cubbies. And it was a call center
Oh.
for Craftmatic adjustable beds.
Oh my God.
Do you remember those commercials?
No.
Yeah.
So there were these like daytime, whatever commercials, and people would call and they would request information on the Craftmatic adjustable bed. And these beds were like $3,000, $5,000. They were very expensive back then for elderly people, that could like be propped up or whatever. So
I like to be propped up.
I mean, me too. I get it now. I'm like, do they still make those? I was gonna Google it. Anyway, so we'd get all these like leads. That's what they would call them, leads. And
Oh.
we'd call all the people and set up appointments for our representatives to come in and tell you about the Craftmatic adjustable bed. But I think what was happening is they had such a bad rap. So they would go in to their house and like practically badger them into buying a bed. So I think it was kind of a bad thing that my job was doing.
Did you get paid a commission?
We got paid a commission, and I was so
Good.
good at
Yeah, I
it.
bet.
Yeah,
I
bet.
mean, well, you've got this young girl who's just like, calling, and I was a cheerleader, and I was sure I'm happy to talk. And like, yes, I was like, appointment,
I love it.
ding, ding.
Well, you
ding.
probably got some of your acting chops that way too.
Well, I did. And I was doing theater in school. And I remember thinking,
Yeah.
if I just do this script, like as if the
Right,
first time,
right.
every single time, it'll kind of keep me honed or something. But everybody in that room was just chain smoking. There's no ventilation.
Oh, remember those days?
Oh, yeah.
Barely.
Yeah. I'd come home and my mom would be,
Mm.
the energy she had
Everybody
left to be
smoked in
upset. She was
Washington.
using to be
Everybody
upset.
drank a lot.
Yeah.
Drinking and smoking.
Yeah. That was crazy. Those were some crazy days. Wouldn't
Wait,
happen
but that-
now.
I think that led to something more. Haven't you done a lot of
Oh,
interesting
yes.
commercials?
Oh,
and-
yeah. Well, then I went on, like I came to LA and I was a waitress at Arnie Morton's The Steakhouse. And when I started there, I don't know if they still do it, but they would roll out this cart, and on the cart would be this like plastic wrapped food.
Oh.
Oh,
So
I
it's like
remember.
Yeah.
a raw piece of whatever, New York, and a raw porterhouse and a filet and whatever.
Did you see Schwarzenegger there a lot? Wasn't he always at
Maybe.
Morton's?
Maybe
It's
I
funny.
think he was at Peter Morton's.
The other Morton's.
the
There's
other
another
Morton's,
Morton's.
Oh.
which is Arnie's
Oh.
kid or
Yeah.
nephew or something. But yeah, we had like everybody came in. I'm sure he came in. But I would sit there every single table all night long and like present this menu. So then when I auditioned for my first, infomercial job, it's like, dang, this comes really easily. like book every infomercial job that comes my way. I got to turn
Right,
them down. Perfect.
See?
Thank you, waitressing.
How much commission did you make for each sale of one of those beds?
I don't remember, but
Or
I was,
appointment?
I barely worked, and I was, when I'm 15, I was making several $100s a week.
That's a lot of money.
It was a
That's
lot.
a
It was
lot.
a
That was a
lot.
lot.
It was
When
a
you're
lot of
15.
money
I
to
think
be
I made
that
some-
young and work 3 hours a shift, a few
Oh,
days
You
a
yeah.
didn't
week.
do any of the extra work?
Oh my
No
God.
extra work. No
Got
extra
it.
parts work for
Got
me.
I think that's a lot of money. I don't think I
Yeah.
made that kind
Me
of
too.
money.
Yeah, no,
Not
it was a
at
lot of money.
all.
Oh yeah.
Same with waitressing at Morton's back
that I
whenever
get.
I
Yes.
started.
I
That
get.
was
I've never
crazy
been a waitress,
money.
but I have been a bartender.
But those were high ticket dinners too.
Yeah.
Very.
And you're waiting on celebrities and
Yeah. Yeah.
I was a bartender because I took a bartending course at Harvard when I was at Boston University.
oh wow.
Oh, you did?
Because it was called I got the degree. It was Masters of Mixology. It was like a 2-week course, and I knew it was the
I never
only.
knew this.
I knew it was the
Me
only
neither.
Harvard degree that I would ever get.
Do you have a
And you don't
frame?
even drink.
I
You
know.
can't- you're-
I was the best bartender.
Have you
It
ever
was in
had
the
a
very
drink?
beginning when I got to graduate school and I bartended at a bar.
Yeah.
Sloan, you would know. It was called.
I'd like to take that course.
It was called
I like
Blackie's
to bartend.
Junior. It was part of the Blackie's House of Beef. They had many of them, and it was
I remember that. Yeah.
it was around the corner from the Secret Service. I knew every Secret Service agent in Washington D.C., and it was the
So
longest
funny.
bar, and
I
I was
love
so
that.
good. And since I don't drink, I never drank any of the profits. I just made great drinks. I was really
And that psychology major must have
Oh
been.
yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, believe
Too.
me.
Seriously.
It was great. They told me stories. I listened, and they had good stories.
I bet they did.
really good stories. That was, it wasn't even my list of all those many jobs I've had, but that was a
Yeah.
good one. Should we talk about raggeries or kudos? We have
Yes.
some good kudos.
Yeah.
We do have some good things.
We have some good ones. Should we
Yeah.
go backwards and do kudos and then?
Sure.
Okay.
I have a really, really, really good kudos, which I think is partly sad and partly good. But you know that they're renaming the College of Fine Arts at Howard University after Chadwick Boseman.
I
Love that.
They're renaming it. Speaking of
very
Washington,
cool.
D.C., Sloan,
That's very
Yeah,
cool.
that's
Yeah.
great.
I love that too.
Yeah.
I know. I have others. Do you want me to do another one?
Sure.
If you'd like to.
Okay, but I don't know all the details of it, but our own Amy Mata has been awarded she's been given some awards this week of this incredible commercial that she's done. You want to explain it to us?
Yes. So the Telly Awards were announced this week, and I received 3 Telly Awards.
Well-
We, our whole production,
Yeah,
for the Craig's commercial,
so good.
Craig's Vegan, that I co-produced.
It's vegan ice cream. Right?
Yes, Craig's Vegan Ice Cream, and in it and co-produced it with Jamie Anderson, who directed it and co-produced it. We won silver for best online spot overall. We won silver for best directing,
Wow.
and we won silver for the People's Choice Award, like the People's Telly Award, which are the only 3 categories that I entered it for.
Oh,
And
wow.
we won in
Wow.
all
Oh,
of them.
wow.
And then the series that I co-directed and was in and co-produced over the quarantine, called The Virtual End, I submitted that whole series
You
as
can
well.
still see that now, can't you?
You can. It's on YouTube. It's
Okay.
called The Virtual End. We have 7 episodes. We go through the stages, the 7
So
stages
cool.
of grief through a quarantine, following a group of friends. And we won a bronze for best online series comedy.
That's fantastic.
So cool.
There you go.
Yay.
So that was good. That was very cool.
Hey,
Okay, those were my kudos, but I shared it with Amy.
Thank you. I share it with the world.
Yeah. Anybody else have any?
Do you have any?
have a
Amy?
kudos.
No, that was mine.
Oh, well, I have one,
Okay.
but can I do it if it's about myself?
Yeah,
Can I
you're
give
supposed
myself
to do
a
it about
coup-
yourself.
No,
Hey, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're not supposed to do it about yourself. You're supposed to
You're
do
supposed
it like
to.
Risa.
You're
There's no
supposed to.
rule. There are
There's
no
no
rules.
rules.
Okay,
What is this?
okay. So I was in the Salt Lake City airport yesterday, and there was a man. I noticed the dog first, because you do. So he's walking his dog, and I could see him kind of pull his dog a little bit. And that was because the dog was trying to
Upsetting.
poop. The dog was trying to poop.
In the airport?
Yeah,
And he
as he's
wasn't
walking.
paying attention.
He's holding a child,
Oh, shoot.
carrying a child with one hand, has 2 bags,
no.
and his poor dog.
Oh.
So
And
you went and got the
I did. I picked up the
puppy.
poop.
Oh, good
I
girl.
went over
I
to
think
him and I
that's
said,
good.
I went over to him and I said, "Oh my God, could your hands be any more full?" He goes, "I'm dying. She's never done this
Thing.
before." I know. And he was
Oh,
no
sweet.
no wife,
Poor
just
baby.
him. So I said, "I've had a dog that
Yeah.
did it before in the
Aw.
middle of Nordstrom's."
Yeah,
and
but
everybody
when
looked
they
at me
gotta
like
go,
I was
they gotta
horrible.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dizzy?
So no, Missy, years ago at the Grove.
Oh.
And that same thing. That's how I knew what that pulling thing was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Same
yeah.
thing. I'm walking around
right.
a leash, and all of a sudden I'm going, "Missy," and she had a bad tummy all across the
Oh,
marble
Oh,
floor in
well,
front
better
of-
than carpet.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So I'm giving
You're a
myself
good
a
person.
kudos.
Yeah.
for
You're a
doing
good
that.
person.
You are, yeah.
You are.
Just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's
Slow.
what
Okay,
kudos
my
are for.
kudos is to the DA of New York, Cy Vance,
Mm,
and to Letitia James,
mm.
the district. She is the New York Attorney General.
Yep.
And for saying that we now have the Trump organization is now involved in a criminal matter. It's no longer civil. And they are finally convening a grand jury, and things are moving along.
Finally. I mean,
Finally.
of course, but okay.
So
Yes.
kudos to Cy and Letitia,
Yeah.
And kudos
my
to
heroes right now.
kudos to Sloan being political again because she was apolitical last week.
For a week.
For a minute.
Okay,
For a
well,
minute.
that's-
Now,
so
remember,
then-
I had my pet peeve on our governor of Texas and the abortion
Yeah. We got it.
ban. So let's not
I'll
get
have a pet
started
peeve.
on Texas
You're
again.
frothing my peeves right
Go
now.
Okay.
Hypocrisy drives me nuts. So good. I hope the Trump organization's criminality burns, and that's all I'll say.
Okay. Do you want me to give one that's so less
So
important?
Self-righteous.
Sweet.
So left important. No, it's not this sweet. Okay, so my raggery is about parking meters. But I'm going to get this. I'm going
You really want to get this out?
to. No, but it's going to go. I'm going to get it wrong, though, Gloria.
No. I think you get it.
When you put your credit card in a parking meter for like, you get $2 for like,
Depending on what part of town
a half an
you're in.
hour or something,
Yeah.
right?
Beverly Hills.
Okay, so then you realize you walk away and then you're shopping or something and you need a little bit more. So you have 15 minutes left, but you need to put in like just enough for another 15 minutes, but you don't have change. So you put your credit card in, it starts over at 0.
Okay,
I
that's if
hate
you're
that.
lucky, because in certain cities,
Mhm.
lots of Santa Monica, some West Hollywood, and maybe some Beverly Hills, you cannot refill the meter
Oh.
because you're supposed to leave.
Oh.
It is a
But how
2-hour
do they-
time limit.
Okay, so how do they know
You
that
have
it's
to move your car.
But how do they know that you've moved it and that when
Wait.
you put money in?
Wait or sensor. It's probably a sensor in the meter that sees the car leave. You could leave,
Oh,
go
I don't
around
know
the
if I'm
block.
believing this.
It's true.
So
It's
then you can
true.
back up and
Yes,
and then
you can back
pull
up
forward
and
again.
come back. But if you don't back up enough, I got a ticket once, and that was why, because I backed up.
I've
but they
never
could
heard of
tell
this.
that it was still the same car. I just barely backed up and moved in again and triggered it, and I still got a
What
ticket.
year was that?
I don't know, like 5 years ago.
I don't think they still do that.
They probably.
What year was that?
It's true. Because it's a 2-hour limit, and you're supposed to. That's the limit. You're
I
not
didn't even
allowed
know
to.
that.
That's
keep
not
it-
even
I
what her
know.
rag is.
I didn't even know that rule.
Well, her rag was that the city's ripping you off.
Yeah, totally ripping you off. But I
Right.
get it.
And
No,
I'm
no,
saying,
I get the tie-in.
I'm saying,
Hey, I don't particularly like the police officers that sit in driveways and try to stop you rolling through a stop sign, which I do have a tendency to roll.
all the time.
Yeah.
And then she shouts at the drivers that may do the same thing.
I do?
Yes, you do.
What do you mean?
Oh my gosh, this just
Oh,
happened.
no, not when somebody's... When,
No,
this
just
is what...
this happened on the way here. We're driving this way, and somebody's coming this way at a 4-way stop and rolls through. And Risa goes, "Oh my! Can you believe that person did
No,
that?
he
Who
didn't.
does?"
No. It was somebody that went through the yellow light when it was turning red, and I was trying to turn left. When you're in the intersection, and the person, so it's a yellow light, and that person had plenty of time to stop because I'm still sitting in the intersection, and they go when it's still red, so I'm going when it's red. I know traffic does drive me crazy.
By the way, there's a lot of
It
road
does.
rage right now.
There's-
So I
yeah.
would
be careful.
try not
Yes.
to be, be
No.
careful.
Paige in
Be
my office
careful.
experienced it yesterday.
Why?
Well, she was at a light, and these two cars were going like in front of each other,
Oh,
and
don't
the
like
guy
that.
stops, like at
Yeah.
the light, but 3 cars back. And
You
goes-
have to be careful.
and goes in his
I mean-
trunk, and then pulls out his hand and goes like
no
that.
way.
oh.
Paige said it was the
It's
scariest
scary.
thing she's ever
You
seen.
really got to be careful. You don't honk it.
No, that's what she
Or-
said.
I
That little
mean,
boy
it's-
was killed last week.
Don't
That
even.
little
6-year-old boy.
That is
Yeah.
just breaking my heart.
Yeah.
I just can't even
Right,
stand
right,
it.
Do you
right,
think it's because
Okay.
do you think it's because the pandemic happened, there was no traffic for like a year. It felt like the city was shut down, and then everything kind of reopened or is feeling reopened. for the most part. And suddenly there's all this traffic and nobody knows what to do. And people
I
are
don't
just
know. I
Right.
think
sporadic.
Always been
I
this-
think it goes back to jobs. You know, some people still may not have one,
Yeah, of course. A lot of people.
and I think it's desperation. Just,
Yeah.
I mean, we have food lines still, long food lines at the North Texas Food Bank. I mean, it's not like everything's open, everybody's got a job, and everybody's hunky dory now. I mean,
No, there's
Yeah.
still a long way to go before we're
yeah,
anywhere
Yeah.
close to being normal.
right.
Yeah.
The traffic,
I mean-
is past that point.
And
Yeah,
you
it
see
is.
the homeless situation everywhere in California. You see it here. I mean,
Yeah.
We need to
it
do
hadn't gotten better. The pandemic made it worse.
Yeah. That's for sure.
Anybody else
So-
have a pet peeve? Raggery? Kudo? Whatever?
Well,
Yeah.
I'll give myself another kudos if you don't mind. Well, this is
Okay.
another dog story.
Okay, fine.
And this happened yesterday too.
At the airport?
No, at a Starbucks. I went to Starbucks first thing in the morning. Surprise, surprise. And when I got there, as I'm walking up, I saw this very flustered man with his like golden retriever sort of dog. And he's like trying to tie it up to the chair and trying to do whatever. And then I see him tie it to the door. And and I walk up and I'm giving the dog some loving and I go to open the door and the guy comes out and says, "I'm so sorry. I just couldn't know." And there was no customer sitting outside.
Mhm.
He goes, "I just couldn't figure out what to do with the dog." And he goes, "I've tried to put him over there, but I didn't want him to not know where I was." And
Mhm.
anyway, he's doing his whole story. And I said, "Just bring the dog in." He goes,
Now, why didn't he?
he goes, "I can't." And he points at the sign where it says "Service Dogs Welcome." And I looked in and I said, "There's two people in here."
Mhm.
And I said to the woman, I said, "This man's got a dog. Can he bring him in so the dog doesn't have to stay outside?" She goes, "Of course."
Aw.
So
And she
really
could have.
happy.
It could have said it was a service dog or held him in his arms or
What was a golden retriever?
something.
A big dog.
I would have.
I would have too.
Me too.
My little
But,
baby.
But yeah, I was glad I helped him get his coffee.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
good.
Coffee's important,
It's
and dogs are
very
important.
You've been at the right place at the right time,
Twice
Glo.
with dogs yesterday. Isn't that
Yeah.
funny?
So,
Mhm.
should we say au revoir?
Au revoir.
Ta-ta.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Till
Bye.
next time.
Until
Bye.
next time.
Bye. 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 Stone.
Bye, girls.
Bye.